think investing in SpaceX is one of the most clear bets on the future. And I think there will be a lot of people that are going to put money into it. And I think that money is only going to increase the momentum that's been building for the last decade or so. It's not one of those, I don't think it's a short-term bet. It's not one of those things where I think you put $100 in and you're going to pull out $10,000 in 6 months. That's not how it's going to go.
Yo guys, what's good? Welcome back to another episode of Beat the Odds, man. We got some crazy topics to talk about today, man. A lot of movement in the AI space in this latest news cycle. How's everything going?
I mean, personally, everything's going well. And I feel like I'm the most locked in I've been in my life right now. It could be.
What do you mean locked in?
Okay, so I mean, if I just want to jump right into it, man. I mean, look, I got my diet right. Okay, that's number one.
Really?
I got my diet. I got my diet right. Like I'm on the meal plan. Provided by Blueprint. So like I got meal plan. So I don't even think about what I eat. I got the macros and all that. That's already figured out. You know what I'm saying? Now, don't get me wrong. I have 1 or 2 meals in the week that are not that, but already got the calories and proteins, macros, or whatever. That's on automatic. Another thing is that I mean, my job is engineering. It's always been engineering, but AI, I find every week I can find a way to make the next week more efficient. So if I have a hard week 1 week, I say, okay, instead of complaining about the pressure, there's likely something in the way that I'm doing my workflow that I can slightly tweak that can drive my efficiency up the next week. And I just repeat every week. My sleep schedule it's been tight. I'm in bed before 9, sleep 9, latest 9:30, up as of recently up at 4, but mostly up at 5, in the gym by 5:30. Yeah, it's just I've never been like this. Never been like this. So I would just say most locked in I've been. It started last year though, but it really picked up.
That's good, man. I have a similar routine, probably not as rigid as yours. I'm definitely not in bed by 9:30 for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not up at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's definitely not happening.
Yeah.
I do like to be up early, but definitely not that early. But I recently, so last time I was talking to you, Rodney, we was talking about like the Whoop band, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna pull the trigger. And then I saw Google had came out with their Fitbit thing, so I was like, you know what, let me try that. Because it doesn't have the subscription, and so I'm just like, you know what? I'm trying to weed my life off of subscriptions because everything is a subscription now. And honestly, I'm trying to get rid of subscriptions. Yeah. I'm just applying a whole different a financial mindset to my life now, just how I spend my money. So I ordered the Fitbit. I think it's called the Fitbit Air, if I'm not mistaken. So I ordered that, been using that. So now I'm tracking a little bit more health metrics. So that's been helping me to like drive a little bit more consistency with my daily routine. I think tracking and measuring everything, which I know you are meticulous about, I think definitely helps. So I'm getting more into that. I already got like the Apple Watch, so I already started doing that. But I don't know, wearing the Apple Watch every day, it's not something I do, especially working from home. Like that form factor don't really work for me every day as much as like a band. That just, it feels lighter, feels easier. Sometimes I don't even notice it. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so that's where I'm at with it.
That's what's up. That's what's up. If I recall correctly, did we make money off the Fitbit IPO? I'm pretty sure I invested in the Fitbit IPO and made some money off of it. Yeah, like back then. Yeah, like for anyone listening, back then it used to be so easy to make money. All you had to do was go to the New York Stock Exchange and then see what new tech company was coming out and pretty much invest the day it came out. Like, and I'm talking about the ones that you already know. Like we knew about Fitbit. I think actually during that time, I remember Dre made a lot of money on this company called Shake Shack, and yeah, like he was up crazy. Like I was like, damn, I wish I seen that. And all it was is like, bro, just it was just common sense. I don't think it's that easy anymore, but back then it was kind of common sense. But it's good to
Well, speaking of IPO, then should we get straight into upcoming IPO, which could be generational?
I think something.
Yeah. Before we get into that, I do want to say, like, I've been on the same wave as Rodney recently in terms of like, man, every single week Like I'm finding something new to like,
Right.
automate, bro. And mind you, I'm more on like the operator side, but I think the biggest unlock I've recently had is, as someone that stays on top of this space, it's actually quite crazy to say this, but man, Claude Code. Like I was hip with Claude Code, but I wasn't really like using it. And when I say, bro, the way I've set up my system, my file structure, I have like my APIs that that are running a cron every single day at certain times. Like, if I'm just being transparent with you, 100%, I would probably say damn near 100% of what I do, bro, is on autopilot, bro. And the reason why this is possible, because, like hearing something like that, I think most people be like, oh shit, then like, is what you're doing hard? I think the thing people are forgetting is that there were two big unlocks over the last, I would say, year that made this possible. The first one was, I think they started training these models to be able to use the computer. And then the second thing that made it possible is when you get models like Claude Opus 4.7 that can now do tasks, on a longer time horizon and more, efficiently, but also accurately. You get crazy, just like outcomes, bro. And I mean, if people have not been playing around with like the Claude Chrome extension, where you can literally record your screen and teach Claude how to do a task click by click, each of the tabs open, bounce, like, sometimes we have to, bounce between different contexts. It's wild. And what I would say, bro, is like, I'll probably have more fleshed out thoughts when we talk about this on like the next pod. But I do think the experience that I'm having right now does feel like the future, but it is bringing up a lot
Right.
of questions about the future that people are telling. And I think my position is probably going to push back against some of what people are saying. But yeah,
Okay.
that's kind of been my last week, but it's been in the same direction as you, Rob.
Yeah. Like it's AI every week is surprising me by its capabilities. And then I'm getting to the point now where I'm like, let me just see if it'll do this. Like for example, the
Yeah.
other day I'm on Cursor. I'm like, you know what? Let me see. We have an AI code reviewer, right? And it leads it reviews the code, and then we go in and we fix the code, and I told Cursor, I said, once this, I said, push the pull request or push the changes, and look at the reviews that come in. If the reviews are reasonable, fix them. If they're not, comment on the reviews with one line why they're not. And it was able to do it. And that's just one example and I'm sitting there like, I'm like, it's making me realize how many things it's able to do. I mean, it's easy to underestimate, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, like, I have a feeling that I'm even still underestimating. But right now, my goal is, as long as I can improve
Let me
each week, that should compound.
Let me go ahead and accelerate that, bro. So yeah, one of the biggest unlocks for me, bro, is like, a lot is being done to really push these models in the direction of being able to continually learn. So a few weeks ago, Anthropic ended up rolling out a dream feature. A dream feature essentially allows it to go over some file that you're treating as like a container for your memories. And then periodically it looks over those memories and essentially learns from them and like basically rewrites that file so that it can better apply it in the future. And so the way, I don't think they've really made this like super easy, and maybe they're doing it in the background for their consumer product, but the way I've kind of set it up in my Claude Code is each parent directory and subdirectory has its own learning for the individual, either task or like project or whatever. And then what I'm doing is after every conversation, I've just created this skill literally to take whatever it's learned from that, context or that conversation, and then rewrite that to the learnings. And then I have a scheduled routine set up where every few days it's then running the dream mode. That way when I wake up in the morning, basically it already has
Right.
the new
You already
learnings.
got something going in the morning. Yeah. Yeah.
And when I tell you that shit is a cheat code, because think about like when you have it do a task for the first time, especially using computer use. If you did not walk it through how to do that task or record your screen on how to do that task, it will make mistakes, right? And that will lead to either that task taking a lot more time or you being frustrated that it did not get it right the first time. But I can tell you here now, if you write to learnings, like if you have it right to learnings, like, hey, instead of clicking this button, I should have clicked this button. I'm telling you, you will be surprised that the second time that you come through, that thing gets it like this. And so I think that has been like one of the biggest unlocks. And once again, that's just a hack putting together some of these different components that I'm seeing. But even, we all saw the recent hire with like, Andres Karpathy, right? And he's being hired to work on their recursive self-improvement, right? And so this is the direction things are starting to go, but expect that to start being baked into like the primitives they're either offering developers or even start to show up in, all these different, chat products for consumers that are out there as well. But it's about to get crazy.
It's getting interesting. It's getting interesting, no doubt.
So it's a couple of different directions we can take this into, because I mean, we brought up some interesting things. We've often talked about the doom and gloom narrative that's out there. We've each independently have shared our perspectives on how AI is going to alter the world, or we can go down the direction of peeling back SpaceX. Which direction you want to go into?
Okay, this is an interesting one because so look, the one thing I will say just off the start is that I know I'm the villain with the AI narrative. I know I'm the villain. Like even I re-listened to the podcast. I know I'm the villain. I'm still standing on it though, but I know that I'm the villain. I know there's some level of my tone might suggest some lack of empathy for the state of affairs that either are currently happening or might happen. So that's an interesting topic and I'll gladly play the villain again because I still feel the same way. I still feel the same way. But maybe we should get down to business with SpaceX. So
yeah,
SpaceX filed an S-1 on May 20th.
What's the S-1? What's the S-1? Let's not assume people know what an S-1 document is. Like, yeah, what is it?
Well, put simply, it's a document that you file before you publish on the New York Stock Exchange. Maybe it's on other stock exchanges too, but let's just focus on the main one. And it goes over, it's like this huge document. It's like a business overview document. And it has a lot about the financials, a lot about the future of the company, a lot about the plans. And pretty much it's just a ton of pages about what this business is, how it spent the money, how it's grown, what it's lost, basically adding transparency to this company that's going to be sold to the public. And one of the most famous S1s, and this comes up, I guess, maybe not with SpaceX as much, but one of the most famous S1s would be the WeWork S1. And it's famous not because it went very successful. It's famous because it went the opposite, where WeWork published their S1 and people saw all of the bad spending habits. They saw the numbers weren't necessarily adding up and things of that nature. And if I recall correctly, they may have even paused the IPO and pushed it back. Yeah, and then pushed it back after that because it was it was so messy. And just gives people an idea. There is sometimes messiness in S1s. S1s are not always coming out with complete perfect numbers. And behind the scenes, I've worked at venture capital firms. And also just been around and talked. Before IPOs, a lot of things come up in those finances. Maybe the founder, paid off somebody's taxes. Maybe they paid off their cousin's student loans. Maybe but usually a lot of the smaller things can get taken care of. And most people are more so caring about the fundamentals of the business.
Yeah, it's hard to BS the S1. Like you may be able to BS it a little bit, but those things are meticulously scrutinized and looked at.
Yes.
They have a level of detail that I don't think companies ever really expose. I'm thinking, I mean, I look at a lot of the quarterly results. Even in the quarterly results, they don't necessarily go as deep as they do in the S1. So the S1 really gives you a glimpse into not only just what the company does, how they do it, who's managing the company, and really getting a perspective on their view. And so, and the SpaceX S1 is pretty telling because it tells us a little bit about like what they're trying to do, right? So they're targeting, which is a crazy valuation, a $1.75 trillion valuation. They're planning to raise an estimated, I think, $75 billion plus, which I think would be the most in history. They have a lot of banks lined up to kind of purchase some of these shares. They have, I think, over 21 banks lined up. Of course, Elon Musk has controlling interests of the company, so they're splitting the company into two different class of shares, which is not uncommon. This is a pretty similar structure that Google and Alphabet have, as well as Meta. Well, Elon will maintain predominantly voting control, while the public shareholders just kind of take on the financial risk, sort of say. Most of the times public shareholders have a little bit of say in governance, like in the case of Tesla. That will not be the case, it looks like, in SpaceX. But they also broke down kind of like the three business segments they have, which I thought were interesting. So they have connectivity, they have space, and they have AI. The connectivity is the one that I think most people are probably most familiar with, and that's the Starlink business, which is doing really well. I mean, the growth numbers on Starlink is pretty crazy. That business alone generated almost $12 billion in revenue and almost $4.5 billion in profit last year. And so I think that's about like 61% of their revenue right now. So it makes up a large volume of the revenue. So that Starlink business is driving revenue, which is, it's interesting. I remember when they first launched and we used to talk about the potential there, and to see where the business is now is pretty amazing. And that's the only business unit that is profitable right now. So far, that business in Q1 has hit $3.2 billion in revenue, about $1.25 billion, almost an operating profit, which again, when you look at their overall quarterly revenue, that's about almost 70% of their consolidated revenue for the quarter. So I'm emphasizing that so that everyone gets an idea of how concentrated revenue is today, at least in the Starlink business, which is not totally surprising. But then they have two other businesses, which is space. That's their launch business, where they send satellites back and forth, back and forth to space. They have contracts with the federal government. They also have contracts with NASA, which is part of the government, of course, too, but with the Pentagon, I mean. And then they have their AI business, which we know they've been building out. I think, is it Colossus? Is that the name of the data center?
Yeah.
In Memphis, that the first one that they had come on, I think two other data centers or three other ones that they've been rolling out as well. They signed that long-term contract commitment with Anthropic for Anthropic to pay them, I think it's $45 billion. I think it's like $1.25 billion. But this is a non-binding contract. Any one of them can walk away, I think, within like a 90-day heads up. That's what I saw. So this is a very interesting business. Again, it has three different segments: the connectivity, the space, which is space launch, and then the AI business, which is just getting ready to take off. But I mean, it doesn't really make a ton of money right now. Most of its money is coming from one segment. But again, we know we can never leave out count Elon out, because he's going to figure out a way to squeeze out more revenue from this business.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I'm kind of curious about is, from your perspective, when people would look at a company like SpaceX, even just like a few months ago when they made the acquisition of XAI, people were questioning, like, why would a space company buy an AI company? I'm just kind of curious. How do you see those three segments, working together?
How do I see them working together?
Yeah. What's the relationship between them?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the first thing is you can't really get to space without a launch business. And I guess if you do get to space with the launch business, then you need connectivity, right? And then I think this is where we're going with AI. I think everybody just needs that. So I think all of these businesses kind of reinforce each other, which I think is the smart way that Elon's kind of built the company, right? They started off with rockets, just to kind of give a little bit of history. They started off with rockets, just trying to produce reusable rockets. They've essentially mastered that market and really created a whole new category in rocket technology. There was no ideal of recreating rockets, and really there was no need to even do that, right? He created a whole new segment in that category. And so I think naturally, because they got good at that, I think pushing into the connectivity business makes sense. I've also heard that they have plans to push beyond just internet and to also get into like telecommunications. I mean, that's the biggest business there is. I mean, the whole world runs off internet, runs off sending data through fiber optic cables. And so, if you can provide a whole new platform, which is bringing that through space satellites, I think that's quite interesting. And then they just have an advantage in terms of how to get those satellites into space at a cost really that nobody else can kind of really compete with. And then I think the AI piece makes a lot of sense right now. I mean, sometimes you got to ride the momentum wave. I would also argue to accomplish some of the things that they're trying to do in space, I don't think it would hurt to have AI play a critical part in that. So I think that's just a critical precursor and input into order to achieve some of the broader objectives of SpaceX, which is getting to Mars, building colonies on the moon, building data centers into space. I think if you're going to do that, I don't think it hurts to have access to frontier models or be a frontier model leader yourself. And then I think the deal that they struck with Anthropic similarly reminds me to kind of the approach to Amazon plays, which Amazon's entire philosophy is taking a cost center and turning it into a revenue center. They've consistently done that with their Prime business. They did it with their Amazon Web Services business. They've done it with their logistics business, where they take an internal cost structure and they turn it into a revenue driver. That's the exact same thing that Elon is doing with the Colossus data center. They put, I don't know, $10 billion in CapEx into that building, or however much CapEx into it. They need some way to extract that. Unfortunately, XAI is probably not generating that much revenue to justify the CapEx investment. In fact, the AI business did less than $1 billion in revenue in this quarter. So that's a pretty small business. It also has a 700, almost $600 million loss. So, I mean, they're not making money on that. So, I mean, bringing in outside frontier models to rent that compute makes a lot of sense. So I think structurally, going back to the question, I think structurally, Elon, which again is what he's really good at, I think he has built the right company structure between space, getting the space, building the right platforms to get there, connectivity, keeping everything connected, and then building out the AI software plus obviously the data center, the hardware component. I think he's structurally built SpaceX into a business that can be a fortress. And so I think there's easily what they did, $20 billion, what do you say last year? Roughly $20 billion.
Yep.
I think there's an easy roadmap for them to get to $100 billion. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I 100% agree with you on like two things, the structure and then also like the cost advantages that this structure would, kind of gives them. I think even when I initially was kind of going through the S-1 and just, they were speaking in terms of the three core businesses, I think, you do end up missing some interesting like insights if you don't unpack what is within those. So even like something that stood out to me was, no, you're right about them wanting to get into phones. And so they actually did a $20 billion deal that just got approved literally 2 weeks ago. And it's for Starlink to be able to basically bypass, having to work with the telecom towers like, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile. So that's definitely a lane that they're starting to get into. I think in terms of their data center business, that's becoming such an advantage because part of it, one of the things that we always hear is, a sleeping data center or just, sleeping chips is revenue that isn't being collected, right? And that's billions of dollars that's not being collected, but there's no one who can build these data centers faster than Elon. I think right now the number is somewhere around like 70 to 90 days that it's taking him to just kind of be able to spin this up. And one of the critical pieces to be able to spin this up is power. And so they actually made a $2 billion mobile gas turbine acquisition that just closed this month too. And this was part of the reason they were able to kind of, stand up Colossus with, being able to get around some of the constraints that, the grid was giving them in kind of like Memphis. And then obviously I think there's the cursor. Like I think all roads are probably pointing towards them getting to cursor. Elon recently said that, the new upcoming Grok model that's getting rolled out used a ton of that cursor data. And something that really stood out about cursor that I think is going to easily transfer over to Grok as well is their recent composer 2.5 model. It actually scored higher than Opus 4.7 and I believe OpenAI's 5.5 model, not only in terms of performance, but cost on like the agentic coding like benchmark. And the interesting thing about that was they were able to do most of those tasks for under $1, that would have taken like $10 to $11 for like, Opus 4.7, right? And so if all things go right with Cursor, they're now going to end up acquiring this company that's in majority of Fortune 500s right now at the engineering state. And they're going to end up having another big business that's going to fold up into AI. And we know code has been the vertical that has just, been giving and unlocking a lot of these performances. And so when I look at this, I think there's this huge kind of like flywheel that, is very easy to like miss where, because like you said, they have these rockets, it does make sense that they're able to kind of get these, satellites in the space cheaper than anybody else. I think one of the things,
satellites, right? Over 10,000 satellites deployed, right?
Yeah. They do, which is crazy, and nobody else is close.
Bro, just to reemphasize that, to make sure everybody heard this, 10,000 plus satellites. Like, you're right. Nobody is even close to being able to match the scale of that network, but also to deploy it at the cost and at the time that they can do it. I mean, it's incredible. Like, nobody's done it.
And I think they deploy them every month or every quarter or something like that. I had once bought a Starlink satellite, the consumer version. It was interesting. It didn't work for me because the way that my apartment was set up, I couldn't have it point at the sky. Now there are smaller versions though, which may have worked where they take up less space. But it was kind of cool where they can tilt automatically based on like where the satellites are in the sky. So
Yeah.
it's a really cool product. But one thing that stood out is, well, in regards to this whole SpaceX and XAI conversation, and even the cursor part, XAI came out with, or SpaceX AI came out with Rock Build, which is essentially a competitor to Cloud Code, Cursor, and Codex. And I thought that was interesting given the Cursor deal. There's probably not a clause in that deal to prevent them from competing with Cursor, as I would expect, because they're now hopping into the coding game. But I find that interesting. And I think Dre's point should not be overlooked, which is that essentially they are going to need AI in whatever their aims are for the future. There's really no aim that SpaceX could have in the future that would not require them, or at least it would not be convenient for them to have their own AI infrastructure. So it does make sense for them to do it, whether or not they are exceeding any of the other AI companies on a consumer angle. They're still going to need AI, just as Tesla has AI in its vehicles or whatever the case is. So it makes sense. And it's not investment advice, but I personally think that not investing in SpaceX is probably just not a good idea. I think investing in SpaceX is one of the most clear bets on the future. And I think there will be a lot of people that are going to put money into it. And I think that money is only going to increase the momentum that's been building for the last decade or so. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that kind of unfolds. But it's not one of those, I don't think it's a short term bet. It's not one of those things where I think you put $100 in and you're going to pull out $10,000 in 6 months. That's not how it's going to go. But if you can put, $50, $100 a month or whatever you can do into it, I think personally, it's not something that most people would regret in the long run over a few years time. I think it would do more than 5% basically. So yeah, that's my take on that.
I'm 100% with you. I think this is definitely something people are going to want to put money into. But I could see why people may not want to at this price, if I'm going to be honest, right? Just because if we're being honest, very similar to the Tesla bet, so much of the current price that we're probably going to, this thing is probably going to shoot up to 300 plus, like, day of IPO, like, if we're going to be honest, right? I would probably end up putting it at around like 60 to 80% of that price is probably going to be just premium on like what the future can hold, because there will be a question of a company that is doing $20 billion in revenue. Do they command that type of multiple for that type of valuation. And to be honest, I don't know if we have many people that really can wrap their head around like their business, right? But I think the case that I would make, bro, is one of the recurrent themes that we've been talking about in our group chat, but also on the pod as well, is when it's coming to AI, the sentiment is starting to matter. Rather if it's, showing up in companies, but, the recent point we talked about was the data centers, the fact that you have physical data centers, those projects are either being put on pause, canceled, whatever it is. And I think the thing that I found was interesting was, I mean, this is just naive of me, but I wasn't aware that, we had the Chinese media. They found that $2 billion had been routed from foreign charitable vehicles to different U.S. advocacy groups that were driving a lot of this anti-data center kind of like push here.
I saw that.
Yeah. And so this will continue to grow. I can't remember if it was you or if I just read that somewhere, but it's upwards, I believe, of like 20 plus states that have already banned data centers being built, in their state. And so what's going to come next? And I think it will be the data centers in space. I think like most people probably listening, when I first heard of the concept of data centers in space, I thought it would be literally these large buildings that they're going to be put in space. But that's just not the right way to think about it. That is not what they're going to be putting up there. It is literally going to be racks, a rack of GPUs in one data center today weighs about 3,000 pounds. So it's going to be multiple racks that they'll put into space, and then using lasers, very similar to how the Starlink satellites now communicate now, they're going to be able to hook those different racks up to communicate together to deliver inference. Training will, at least from all the research I've seen, AI training will continue to be something that we do here on Earth, but inference, which makes sense because of agents and just the demand that is growing there, that is what we're going to see move to space. And I think, it was literally just last week that SpaceX just did another test of their Starship rocket, which is very important because you're going to see acceleration of them testing that thing and really trying to get that into production. And the reason why is the cost advantage that it gives, right? And so I think, before Falcon 9, which is kind of the rocket that they're using now to kind of get most things into space, it cost around like $50,000 or so to get a kilogram of something into space. Falcon 9, because of it being reusable, dropped that down to about $1,500. Starship, at least what Elon is claiming, should get that to $100, even potentially down to $10. If you can send something to space at that type of price point, I don't think people are understanding how big space is compared to Earth. So the way the math works out is, essentially they're measuring everything in like square miles. That's how they kind of think of it. A square mile in space is equivalent to like 1 gigawatt, right? I think here in the US we have around 20 something gigawatts or whatever, right? If we were to literally put 1,000 square miles, so essentially the whole US grid in space, that would be 0.00004% of just the lower Earth orbit. This isn't even talking about geospatial, which is usually I think around like 300 something kilometers above the Earth's atmosphere. We're not even talking about deep space. We're just talking about the space Starlink literally operates in today. It's not even 1%. Literally we can fit all the data centers that we have built here on Earth and plan to build in the US entire power grid into less than 1% of space. That market is huge.
Send stuff to space. If we can send stuff to space for $10, should we just take all the landfill trash and throw it up in space and burn it? Why have it all on Earth? Like, shouldn't we just take all this trash that we have on Earth and throw it in space and just burn it?
I can see that. That's a whole business within itself. You know what I'm saying? Like SpaceX should get into that business because all you're doing is loading trash on a rocket and shooting it out of here, right?
Yeah, throw it out. Just throw it out there, like on a cheap rocket, throw it in space, burn it, and then now, like we're good. We're good on here. Maybe, hopefully, what the future holds is a cleaner Earth because we're throwing that shit somewhere else. We're throwing that shit somewhere else, and we don't.
We should take it. We should take it to another planet and just drop that shit off.
Yeah, just drop it, and maybe 1,000 years they'll be mad at us, but for now, I think it will work. Somebody's gonna say we were littering in space. Who's gonna be the first asshole to say we were littering in space?
Yeah. So that is the bet that is making me super bullish. And so, but once again, because we have this understanding of, I think, technology for this type of business, I do think it behooves you to really understand technology and be able to connect the dots on this, because it wouldn't make sense. If I could see someone being like, this is a distraction, still being caught up on XAI, losing a fuck ton of money, not really competing with, Claude, Chat GPT, and being like, what is Elon doing?
Yeah.
But so
these infrastructure plays are long term, man. They take time. It's just like everybody said the same thing about Amazon. You go back and you read some of the early criticisms in the early 2000s at Amazon, and even in the mid 2000s that Amazon kind of received, right? And then you look at it now, and everybody I think it's undeniable now. Amazon is one of the best ran corporations we've ever seen. I mean, it just is, right? But for a long time, people questioned the business model, whether or not it made sense. And again, I would argue it's probably one of the best business models out there, right? It's definitely one of the most enduring.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of the most profitable, right? It supersedes many different economic cycles. I don't care where the economy is. People will order from Amazon. You know what I'm saying?
Amazon,
my point in bringing that up is that I think SpaceX is in a critical space right now where they're investing a lot into this infrastructure, where the questions about the returns are being asked. But the real thing is, what does SpaceX look like in 10 years? What does it look like in 15 years? That's the real question. Not what does it look like today, but what does it look like in 10 years when they have 100,000 satellites or 200,000 satellites in space, right? Where they have a much more robust launch business, where they own 100 data centers just in space alone, or 200 data centers. So where does it go in 10 or 15 years? I think that's the right lens to look at SpaceX. Again, if I'm using Amazon as a comparative, which I would.
Amazon is the best business ever built, in my opinion.
Easy. Not even a question.
Yeah, I think it's just simply the best business ever built. It's just hard to, even better than Apple. And I know everybody wouldn't agree, maybe, but
yeah,
just the business itself, it's ridiculous. It's like perfectly built.
It's so obvious, but then you go back and you look at people, and literally people will be like, why would people buy stuff online? Like, is this a gimmick? Like, what do you mean you're trying to ship stuff? Like, you're building all these warehouses for what? Like, people literally were like confused about that. Now it's like, okay, obviously you need to have this, right? So I think SpaceX is in that same bucket. So I agree with your sentiment, Rodney. This is not probably like a quick play, but I think if you can be very patient, take a long-term view, and really ask, where can SpaceX has the potential to be in the next 10, 15 years, I think you're going to make a shit ton of money off this stock. And again, that's not financial investment. I just think that's just the likely outcome given the trajectory of where they're making investments at today.
I'm so confident in the outcome that it just seems like it's just the truth. And I hear Brylan too, because there is going to be people who don't see it. And I think it's going to be unfortunate. Like there's going to be people that, and maybe some of those people might make money off the short term if they're able to, make money off of maybe some of the dips or whatever. But over the long term, this is just an obvious one. It's an obvious one. It's one of the most clearest ones. And even if Elon were to, God forbid anything happens to Elon, it still would do what it's going to do. It has too much momentum. It's very hard to start. Nobody's going to start outside of Jeff himself. Nobody's going to start a space company. So it's too late. Yeah.
The other thing I would add real quick is I think kind of like 2 points. People may be skeptical of like, okay, if y'all are like so bullish on SpaceX, like what is stopping a Google or even an NVIDIA from like doing data centers in space. They don't have the fucking rocket. And
I mean, I'm like, you got to get there. You got to get there first. Simple.
You got to, like, bro, and literally go look at the charts, bro. Go look at the charts. It's not even close when it comes to the number of flights any company is. Like, if you add up all the rocket companies out there, they're still not even freaking close. They're probably doing a percent of what SpaceX is doing.
They've mastered the launch process. They've literally mastered it. We've seen them do it. We've seen rockets blow up on the field. We've seen the first one blow up, the second one blow up, the third one. We've seen it. We've literally.
But this is where understanding technology comes in, because as engineers and founders who have built in this technology space, we understand the value of iterating to learn. And I think even seeing this past, Starship launch where, when it was coming down into the Indian Ocean and it ended up exploding on kind of like, I was reading comments on YouTube and like Twitter, and people were like, see, like it just doesn't work. It fails. You're missing the point. Go look at the previous, launches before then. Each time it's been getting better and better. And yeah, I think that's something that people are overlooking. I think the other point I was going to make too is like, I know there's been a narrative around like, well, can you even put a data center in space? I don't know if y'all are familiar with a company. It's called StarCloud. So they're a company backed by NVIDIA. They specifically build the packaging to put data, like the racks of chips, into space. And so back in November, they partnered with SpaceX to put the first H-100 into space. And then they partnered with Andrej Karpathy. They took his nano chat model and they trained it in space. Why is that important? Going back to this iterative mindset, these people like to start small, test assumptions, and build it over time. What has already been proven is a GPU that wasn't even built for space can perform in space. And then the second thing too is an AI model can be trained in space, but then also via Starlink, then send the tokens, the message you see on the screen, back to you on Earth. And all the pieces to make this happen the core assumptions have been proven out. Over the next few years, just because of the pressure on data centers, just because of the pressure due to the demand of compute and the supply shortages and things of that nature that are critical to building these type of things here on Earth, I do think you're going to see a crazy acceleration. And so the play that yes, I think SpaceX is a business that you could buy and you could hold for long term. If that is not your mindset, I totally understand. If I was a trader, and this is probably what I'm going to end up doing, is ride the sentiment. There will be a change in sentiment around this company and Elon that no one will be able to escape the, vicinity of. And I do think there's probably, some type of, leap option, rather if it's a year or two out, where you're going to be able to hit big, because as NVIDIA's revenue showed, the fact that, I think, what did they do? Was it 70 or something billion dollars in a fucking quarter, which is crazy, and probably going to end up doubling or something again. Demand is off the charts. And so it's going to end up leading to upstream value capture eventually. And so that's a potential trade to consider as well.
Yeah. So there's so much more we could say on that, but let's switch gears a little bit. I think, well, there's a few ways we can go, but one way potentially is Meta did some layoffs.
Oh boy.
And the Meta layoffs are interesting because they laid off about 20% of the local workforce in Seattle. So I think about 1,400 jobs. I believe I also saw a video from Mark Zuckerberg essentially taking responsibility for managing the company and the decisions that he has to make and things of that nature. And so I saw that. But these days, sometimes I question whether or not things are AI videos or not. I believe it was a real video though, and while we also see something where Facebook has been talking about, or Meta has been talking about, training AIs on people's work, which some employees internally have been protesting on, saying we don't like this, etc., which is interesting. And I think this is just like an open topic. I mean, we could take this multiple different ways, but I think this builds on some of the things that we have talked about on some previous podcasts where there's going to be some pain. There's going to be some pain in this transition. They're citing AI. We don't know whether or not that's true or not. AI is definitely the best scapegoat you have right now. So even if it wasn't AI, you could say it's AI. But I'll give my personal opinion, and hopefully I'm not the villain on this one. But my personal opinion is that I think Zuck is not happy with the results of people at the company, and I think Zuck has tried multiple different things, whether it's VR, whether it's AI, and he's dumped billions of dollars into them. He's he's fired certain leaderships or leaders and replaced them with high, very expensive leadership, and he's done these moves, and I don't think he's seeing the ROI, and I think he's looking at things from a perspective of, I think he gets the feeling that maybe the company is complacent. That's just my personal opinion. I don't have objective proof to say what Zuck is thinking or what's on his mind, but I think that these layoffs that are happening pretty frequently, at least quarterly, but maybe even a little bit quicker than that, I think he's sending a message. I think he's essentially saying, "Hey, look, you can get cut." And I've seen Meta employees say that they're worried about losing their jobs and stuff like that. And that's something that people tend to have empathy for, which I would as well. But I also think that maybe I don't know if this is controversial, but I think that when you make a lot of money, you should be scared of losing your job. Like when you make a lot of money, you should have a healthy fear of losing your job. You should not be feeling like, oh, I'm good. Like I'm good. You should be making $500,000 and feel like, oh yeah, I'm straight. Like, and the analogy I would say is, if you play for the NFL, you play for NBA, you do your absolute best, knowing that any day they could cut you from the team, especially the NFL. They could cut you. One day you're in, one day you're out, or one day you are traded to another team. You got to uproot your whole life. And so I think that it is, when you think about high paying, and I'm assuming the people that we're talking about are the high paying ones. I don't have that information. It could be lower level jobs that are, but when I think about Meta, I just think of a floor of like 100,000. I think of a floor of like 100 and some thousand. I could be like dead ass wrong on that, but I'm thinking about people who are making base salaries of 200 and up, and then total 300, 400, 500, and in some cases millions of dollars. I don't think you should feel comfortable. In fact, I think you should be top talent. You're getting paid like professional, not not the highest paid professional athletes, but you're getting paid at the highest level, and I think you should be not necessarily comfortable. But I don't know how people feel about that. But I think Zuck is setting, because I don't know about you guys. When I'm at a company, or when I've been at companies, or I've observed companies from a distance, when people get laid off, or people get fired, that does make people internally. It sends a bit of a message. And if you were chilling, you might think, "Oh, wait, hold on, let me work a little bit more this week and this month. Let me just do a little. I want to make sure I'm good." And so, in my opinion, I think Zuck is not liking the return on investment on a lot of the initiatives that he's starting, and he's really not getting a lot. Like, maybe the best thing might be the meta glasses, and they're still not as good as they could be. They're still not as good as they could be. But VR, AI, and they all seem to be failed. Yet he spent 50 billion, maybe 60 or 70 billion on those projects, and he's looking at like, y'all supposed to be the best. So what's going on?
So I saw that they're cutting what around 8,000 jobs, right? Is that right? Somewhere around.
in total, and then Seattle was 1,400.
Okay, so I saw that they're going to save from a capex perspective roughly $2 to $3 billion annually from these cuts. So it's not really that much. I mean, I think Meta is gonna they've committed what 100 billion towards AI data center, 80 billion on it, but
Jeez,
somewhere around there.
jeez.
So I mean, you can consider 3 billion versus the capex that they're spending on that versus they've spent I don't know how much money on trying to build out the
So
metaverse.
it's not about money, in your opinion. It's not about the money.
I don't think it's about the money. I don't
Okay,
think
what do
it's
you think?
about the money. I don't think it's about the
Okay,
money. I do think though there is probably an internal conversation about needing less resources to get more done. And I think an outcome of that is yes, you do save some money on the bottom line, but I think structurally, it's just probably easier to get stuff done when you have less than if you have 8,000 less people. Like we know as organizations grow, as you start adding more layers, the ability to move and get things done is a lot slower. No matter how you try to shape the culture, you just got more processes, more people, more things, just more shit getting in the way. So I think part of it is Meta trying to be more efficient as a business. I also think they probably just overhired, right? I think they just naturally just overhired, right? Like many companies did. I don't know if it's a COVID thing. I don't know if it's just a. I mean, they're making record revenue. I mean, think about it, just a human psychology. What happens when you start making more money? Do you not go out and spend a little bit more money? Do you not treat yourself a little bit different? Do you not buy a little bit more for yourself, a little bit more for your girl, a little bit more for this play? When you start making more money and when you're not making that money, what do? You cut back a little bit, right? So I think they're just falling into that same trap. I mean, look at their revenue, look at profit. It's up. What do you naturally do? You go spend that money. You go out and you go higher. You go out and you make capital commitments that, hey, you don't necessarily know if it's going to work out, but hey, you got the money. You can experiment with that, right? So I think they're starting to look at that, and maybe they're looking at it, like you said, Rodney, they're not getting those returns. So we got to get a little bit more discipline because clearly this being up into the right can't last forever, right? And I think if Zuck is
Yeah.
smart about that, which he is, he knows that because he's been through several different cycles at this point, and so he knows that this record revenue. I mean, they just passed. We just talked about it on a couple of pods ago. Meta just passed Google in ad revenue, right? Like, and they know that again, this just up into the right trajectory can't last forever. So I think it's about
exactly.
getting a leaner organization, being more efficient, shifting and pivoting from being so overly indexed in this metaverse reality and virtual reality space to AI and really just trying to ride the waves. And I think what Zuck has been really fucking amazing at, and I have to give him credit, while a lot of this stuff may not work, Zuck has always been willing to pivot such a big organization quickly and decisively. He is not one to sit
Yeah,
around going back and forth. No, if we need to make cuts, they're making cuts. If they got to pivot into a new space, they're going all fucking in, spending 100 billion, 50 billion, 30 billion. He'll do whatever to spend it, to try it, see if it's working. If it's not working, cut it. Double down on what's working. He's been masterful at doing that. We've seen Facebook go through many different cycles over the past several decades. And so, yeah, I think if there's one person who can navigate the super cycles and figure out how to monetize it, how to make money, how to pivot their organization correctly, I think Zuck is one of the best at it. So I think again they've gone through some choppiness, but I think they'll figure it out. And unfortunately, employees are kind of stuck holding the bag, which is usually what happens at big tech. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I
you
think
gotta use that money when you get the meta offer. When you get the meta offer, yeah, when you get that meta offer, you haven't made it. Don't think in your mind you made it. Don't that's when you lost. Don't start thinking you made it. Start thinking, hey, look, this money is not usual. This is unusual money. This is high level money. This is life changing money. And do what you can to, just like what they're doing now, to stay lean. I'm not saying don't have fun. I'm not saying to not use that money to build your foundation of your life, and do not expect for Meta to keep paying you handsomely forever. It might happen. It might happen, but just don't expect it, and you'll be better off that way. And that's, yeah. But go ahead, Brian. I just want to put that out there because that's a key piece. Because then also I think it'll keep you in that, because whatever hunger that got you that job at Meta, don't stop. Don't just keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep it going. Whatever got you, whatever that level of skill and that level of back-to-back interviews that got you at Meta, keep that going. Do not stop that. And it's easy to stop that when you get that 300,000 and every check after taxes you're getting about 12, 13, 12, 14,000 every 2 weeks. Yeah, okay, I get it. I get it. It's a nice amount. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they say at 30,000, you really got. They say at about 30,000 net a month, you really ain't got nothing to worry about, no matter where you at. So I understand. Net. Yeah, so it's like I get it, but nah, like because this is literally how the golden handcuffs happen, and then before you know it, you're really just stuck, and you're living a lifestyle, and you're now scared to lose your job, as opposed to being a high performer and saying, "Shit, if I lose my job, I'm so good, so I'll pop up at Tesla, I'll pop up at Netflix, I'll pop up at this company, like I'm top, I'm top." So, but yeah, but go ahead, Brian.
I mean, I think all these different points that you're making, rather if it's like, risk management, even thinking about the company from like an efficiency angle, or even just like, yeah, bro, it is really crazy that we've probably all been victim to this at some point, which is why we're able to share this with you, around making that kind of money. And then, things happen that seem surprising, but, the writing was on the wall the whole time. And I think we have enough data over 2 years, rather if it's because of overhiring during COVID or because it's AI or whatever. The reality is these companies are cutting heads. That is just the reality. That will continue to happen. And I think, yeah, the word that just kept popping into mind as y'all were speaking was culture. What role does culture play in a company when the narrative that every major CEO is saying is like AI is the next industrial revolution, right? And we've all been in that founder seat, and we've all realized how important it is to meet those type of moments. You need everybody in the same mindset, wanting to go in the same direction. I think with the type of bets and decisions that Zuck has made over the last year, rather if it's literally wiping the whole AI org clean, bringing in someone new, getting scale AI, accepting the fact that Llama wasn't a hit the way they thought it was, he's willing to make those decisions. And so something that I'm curious about, and we may never know this, is like how much of these cuts were just because you weren't aligned, rather if it was your role or even just as an individual, you weren't aligned with where we were going. Because the fact of the matter is, just because people work in tech, the sentiment is, and it's probably something like that across these companies too, is because they're scared of their jobs, they probably think of AI as a negative sentiment. I'm sure unless these companies force them to, really use these AI products, which I think Meta was one of those companies that said it was going to be in your performance review for you to have to use these AI products. So they were giving you an incentive to use it or get fired, right? You used it. And then, yeah, the other thing too is like Meta was very clear about wanting to train their models because they believe they have top talent. That makes sense. That actually does make sense, because what they're doing
It
right now to
does.
train these models is they're literally hiring professionals to get the data, then to train these models. But if I hired the best people, I no longer need to do that. And so that's where
I
I'm
don't
like,
feel
how
bad.
much
I
of
don't
this was
feel a
culture?
drop of sympathy. I don't feel a drop of sympathy for any of those employees that are saying and protesting that they don't want the Meta to train off their work. I don't feel a drop, because when they were dropping generative images and all these other things that take out graphic designers and slow down their works and thumbnails and these little clips and videos, then nobody cared. But now that you're seeing that wave might potentially clip your job, it might clip your opportunity. Now it's a protest. Now you in the building. Now you trying to gather together. We, we ain't hearing that.
Mm-hmm.
We ain't hearing that. I'm not hearing it. And if I had to stand on the island alone, I'll stand on it alone. But I hope I got some people with me. But I don't care what y'all talking about. We don't care. Look, y'all work for us. This is the business. We monitor all your shit. We gonna put it into the AI models. If it replaces you, so what? Guess what? You should be thinking about how to be useful outside of the stuff that we are training. That's what you should be thinking about. And if you can do that, you probably will have a job. But don't be sitting back hoping that they don't do that. Nah, stop wasting y'all time. Yeah, y'all ain't gonna stop Facebook. In fact, what you gonna do? You gonna protest, and then what? They fire you. What? You gonna start a social media campaign, and then people are gonna feel bad for you for 4 hours, and then the next day they're not gonna even remember, and you're gonna be out of a 300. Come on, let's come on. I don't feel bad for those people, man. Just use your money. Use your money. You got the opportunity. Great job. Congratulations on getting. And if you're at Meta, you should be able to get another job somewhere else. And they're not just letting people go, giving them 2 weeks of severance. That's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. They're giving these people months. And they probably could still do. Yeah, and they probably could still do unemployment if they really have to. So these people, like, come on, guys, come on. Yeah, nah.
Yeah. What else we got? We want to wrap into there. I know we're over
I think we should end it there. We spent a lot on SpaceX, but the thing is, SpaceX, we will have more to say on it because there's like a couple more things I wanted to say, but it was going to be a SpaceX podcast, so yeah. I didn't mention it.
No, it's all good. It's not often that a generational company like SpaceX gives you an inside look. Like we were just talking earlier about in our chat about Coke, the Coke Industries company. Facts. I would argue that's another generational company. We have no insight into it. It's a private business. We have no idea how the sausage is made there, right? We're just sitting on the outside hoping we get the inside look, but you don't see it. And so whenever you do get the opportunity to see inside one of the magnificent companies of our time, ran by one of the most amazing founders of our time, I mean, it's worth spending some time on. So I don't think we should take this for granted. It's rare to see something like a SpaceX kind of go public and be able to kind of dissect it and get inside information. Like Brylan said, who else is going to start a space company? Or one of y'all said, nobody. No, I'm not doing that shit. Ain't nobody about to go start doing rockets tomorrow.
It ain't gonna happen.
You know what
Might
I'm saying?
as well leave it alone. Yeah. It's like it's no point. It's no point. There's better businesses right now.
Facts.
More
yeah, I would say two things that I would leave people with is one, just to kind of like, put a bow around SpaceX. I do hope it inspires people to start to be bolder with their ideas, right? I think, when we think back to that Cold War period and just kind of the race to the moon, mind you, I didn't live during that period of time, but all the documentaries or whatever I've watched, the country, it seemed like, or a good chunk of the country was inspired to think extremely big. Out of that, you got semiconductors, you got GPS, you got all these foundational things that 60 years still later are powering new innovations every single day for us. And so really just hope that like it can be an inspiration for people. I think, I had said this on one podcast. I had the opportunity when I was down in Orlando to see my first, spaceship launch. It was just a normal day. And it's actually really crazy to see people that live in that area. They literally treat it like it's a normal day where they're just sending these satellites into space. But for me, like having seen that for the first time, like I left inspired beyond anything else has ever moved me that way. And then the second thing that I would say too is, I think one of the conversations we're going to continue to have on this podcast, because, these AI layoffs won't, are going to slow down.
They ain't gonna stop.
I don't think, we've touched on many different vectors. The sentiment is going to continue to fluctuate. But I think what's going to really be important is like how does this story evolve and who's going to start telling this story? And I think Rodney dropped this in the chat last week. But for folks out there, if you have not watched the Oprah interview with Dario and his sister, they're both co-founders of Anthropic. Honestly, more of that stuff needs to happen for those type of audiences. And I truly felt like it was refreshing. It was refreshing, to be honest, because I think it was a little bit different than his traditional kind of like doomer, super heavy. So yeah,
thank God. We'll give Dario credit right there. We'll give Dario something, because
don't give him too much credit. You're gonna have to pay up.
I'm not worried about paying.
after I watched the interview, I literally went back and looked at the receipts, and I was like, this might have been one of the best decisions I've made, man. I think this is
So here's the thing about Brylan. Brylan thinks that because in the short term it's looking in his favor that he's going to win a bet that is a long term bet. And so you can have the confidence now, and that's fine.
Yeah,
I understand that. Yeah, I'll let you have the confidence now, etc.
I see the foundation for the long term trend. That's what gives me confidence. That's what gives me confidence here.
Well, either way, it's a. It'd be funny though if right after the bet the narrative switched and I lost the money.
It happens. It happens.
If it switched, because I think it's gonna switch. Maybe I'm wrong on the date. I don't think so. I think I'm right on the date. I'm pretty sure I'm right on the date, but because I just think that there's going to be a large portion of America that's not going to care if you Claude. They're not going to care if you Anthropic. They're going to say you're an AI CEO, and that's going to that's going to be tricky, and they're just not going to care. But but yeah, good pod, guys. I think SpaceX was a good topic, and AI layoffs. We're going to have a lot to speak about on those, and hopefully, maybe even some ways people can navigate those, and how they should be thinking about not being wiped out. Like, either you're going to be the victim or you're going to be the victor.
Facts.
And we've on this podcast have already decided that we are going to be the victors. We're going to be the winners, and so it's a decision. And once you make the decision, it reframes how you think about all this stuff. And there will be victims, but but I believe it's a choice. I believe it's a choice. You don't have to be there. There's
at this point, the information is out there.
Yeah. There's low hanging fruit where you could start. Unfortunately, you can't save everybody. They have, but the fruit is right there. So, but yeah, guys, it was going.
All right, guys. See y'all on the next one.
All right, see you.